There is a people on this planet unlike any other, a people so intelligent, so resilient, so inventive, that their ideas have shaped science, philosophy, finance, technology, and modern civilization. And yet, this same people carry one of the longest and darkest tragedies in human history. Wherever they went, they were pushed away. Suspicion followed them. Hatred chased them. In many places, simply being Jewish meant you were an outsider, or worse, an enemy. How can a community so gifted, so disciplined, so brilliant, also be the one most often exiled, rejected, and persecuted for centuries? Did they do something wrong? Or is the truth far deeper, buried in human psychology, fear of the unfamiliar, envy of success, and the instinctive behavior of crowds? To understand this mystery, we have to travel back through more than 2,000 years of history, through religion, economics, culture, power, and survival. The first thing that sets the Jewish people apart is this. For many centuries, they had no home, no stable land, no nation to return to. They lived scattered across the world, a phenomenon known as the Jewish diaspora. And when a group without a homeland lives among foreign populations, they naturally bring their customs, beliefs, rituals, and identity with them. But this made them stand out. In every land they lived, Jews kept their own foods, holidays, marriage traditions, religious laws, and lifestyles. They were part of the society, yet not fully absorbed into it. And whenever a group looks different, behaves differently, and refuses to dissolve into the majority, suspicion arises. Human psychology is simple. We fear what we do not understand. We distrust what is unfamiliar, and we often resent what refuses to blend in. But the biggest difference, the one that shaped everything, was religion. While most ancient societies worshipped many gods, the Jewish people insisted on worshiping only one God. Just one. No matter where they lived, no matter how powerful the local religion was, they refused to join it. They followed the Torah. They obeyed strict religious laws. They remained loyal to traditions that set them apart from everyone else. To outsiders, this looked strange, even arrogant. Jewish people didn't bow to the gods others worshipped. They didn't adopt the rituals of the land they lived in. They held on to their own identity, fiercely and unapologetically. And anything that cannot blend in will inevitably face a reaction. As time passed, another factor added fire to the tension: economics. During the Middle Ages, in many parts of Europe, Jewish people were forbidden from owning land. No land meant no farming. No farming meant no ordinary livelihood. So they were forced into the few professions that did not require property: trade, business, money exchange, and lending. And lending money has always been a job people rely on but never like. People borrow when desperate, resent paying back, and grow angry at the one who reminds them of their debt. Jewish financial skill, which helped them survive, unintentionally placed them in the role that society instinctively dislikes. The one who handles money, who lends, who keeps accounts, who prospers quietly in the background. But financial skill alone wasn't the problem. The real issue was this: the Jewish people became too successful. Because they were not allowed to own land, they invested in the only thing no one could take from them: knowledge. Jewish children were taught to read early, to debate, to think critically, to analyze, to question, to calculate. Education became a cultural weapon, not for privilege, but for survival. And in any society, a group that is intelligent, disciplined, educated, financially capable, and united will naturally rise. They became better traders, better thinkers, better scholars, better business people, and within a few generations they often rose to positions of wealth and influence. But success, when achieved by a minority, creates resentment in the majority. There is a brutal rule in human society: the more talented you are, the more conflict you attract. The more successful you are, the more envy you receive. The more different you are, the more hostility you face. The Jewish people became the most convenient target for frustration, the outsider everyone could blame. And throughout history, whenever disaster struck, famine, plague, economic collapse, political turmoil, people needed an explanation, a scapegoat, someone to accuse, someone who looked different, someone who prospered even in chaos, someone who could be portrayed as the cause of the suffering. Jewish communities became the easiest choice. When the economy collapsed, they were blamed. When disease spread, they were blamed. When kings needed money or political distraction, Jews were accused. When people needed someone to point at, Jews were the target. This pattern repeated across centuries. They were expelled from England in 1290, then expelled many times from France, attacked during the Crusades, massacred in Russia and Eastern Europe in the pogroms, and ultimately, the darkest chapter of all, 6 million Jews were murdered under the Nazi regime simply for being Jewish. Yet, despite this unimaginable suffering, something extraordinary happened. They did not disappear. They did not collapse. They did not dissolve into history. They did not fade away. Instead, they became stronger. How? Because they possessed something no exile, no king, no empire, no persecution could take away. They had their minds, they had their traditions, they had their unity. They had the lessons carved into their identity by centuries of hardship. And they had the unstoppable determination to survive. Without land, they strengthened their communities. Without power, they strengthened their education. Without security, they strengthened their discipline. Without acceptance, they strengthened their identity. Every time they were expelled from a place, they carried not bitterness, but knowledge. They carried experience. They carried strategy. They carried the exact wisdom needed to survive the next exile. Over time, these skills transformed them into a people with extraordinary influence in science, finance, art, philosophy, medicine, technology, and culture. Not because they were privileged, but because they had no choice. And this leads us to the greatest paradox of all. The more they were oppressed, the more resilient they became. The more they were rejected, the more united they became. The more they were envied, the more exceptional they became. So why were Jewish people expelled everywhere they went? Not because they were evil, not because they were troublemakers, but because they carried qualities that make any minority group stand out. Intelligence, wealth, loyalty to tradition, refusal to assimilate, and the ability to rise regardless of circumstances. And here is the lesson for every one of us. The world often punishes those who rise above the crowd. People criticize what they cannot understand. Society attacks what it secretly envies. And success always comes with a price. The price of being watched, judged, and resented. But the story of the Jewish people teaches something powerful. Do not collapse when life pushes you out. Do not break when others reject you. Do not abandon your identity just to be accepted. Do not fear being different, being talented, or being ambitious. Because sometimes, being pushed away is not a curse. Sometimes, it is the furnace that shapes you into something unbreakable. If a people who were expelled for 2,000 years can rise to become one of the most influential communities on earth, then you too can rise from whatever rejection life throws at you. Your strength is not determined by where you are welcomed, but by who you become when the world tries to push you out.